Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Good.
So today we are going to look at least how we can create an app having some lists of data.
Yes.
For example, we are going to use quotes. For example, I can be having a list of quotes. I have a quote and I have the author. So I want to look at how we can achieve that. So I have created an application. And this application is a stateful widget. I'm using a stateful widget. And I've given the class a name, which is quotes. I think you were seeing that. I have given that class a name, which is quotes. And then that class extends a stateful widget. I'm going to be using a stateful widget. Then I have called that class within the main function. That's why you are seeing these quotes here. So I have called this function within the main function. Then this one is returning a container. So now what we are going to do, I want it to return a scaffold. And then inside this scaffold, I want to be having an app bar. So I have the app bar property. And then I have the app bar widget. The app bar widget. Inside the app bar widget, I'm going to give it a title which is a text widget. And then I can give it a title. I can say my quotes. And then I can center the title using the center title property. And I set it to true. Then after the app bar, I have a body. Maybe you can also change this background color from blue to something else. So background color, you can use colors.red. Let me use the red accent. And then now I can define a body. So now this body, because we want to be having quotes. So this body, I'm going to call it a column. And inside the column, we have children, the children property. Like that. So that is the children property. Now I'm going to create a list. Let me first save this one to update my page. So it is going to take a few seconds. So it is updated. Now I want to create a variable, and we say that whenever I want to create a variable, we create it below this class. We create it below that class, not the first class which extends the stateful widget. The second class which extends an object, which is the quotes state in this case. So that's where I create our variable. And this case, I want to create a list. And the list I'm going to create, because the list can take in anything. It can take in integers, it can take in strings. So you have to define what the list takes in. So this list is going to be a list of strings, because I'm going to type some text there. And then I can give it a name, like this is the variable name. I can call it quotes. Then equals to. So when you are creating a list, we use these brackets, square brackets. The square brackets are the one we use when you are creating a list. And this list, I've called it a list of quotes. I mean a string list, because whatever I'm going to type inside is going to be a string. And then inside, I'm going to type in some quotes. Maybe I can type one quote. That is the first one. I can type in the second. Since they are text, then you have to put them inside the quotes, the quotations. Either use single quotes or use double quotes, any you want. So that is the second one. Then I can type the third one. I can think of any quote I can write there. So I have those three quotes which are inside our list. Since this is a variable, remember when you are creating a variable, you have to terminate always. So when you are creating variables inside this class, you should always not forget to terminate. So now I have terminated because my list stops from there. Now what I want to do, that is the list I have. But now I want to include that list in my body. So how do I achieve that? Because when I run the application, I want to see that list of data. So I'm going to come to my body. And then in the children widget, I'm going to remove these curly brackets. I'm going to remove those square brackets. And then I just type, I'm going to use what we call a map function. What this map function does, it maps the list which I have. Actually, it passes through that list, and then it returns whatever is in that list. So I'm going to use that map function. So that was the name of the variable, quotes. Then since I want to use a map function, so I write quotes.map. And then here inside, I want to include a function which is going to perform that. So I'm going to type a function, and this function will take in a quote, and then it will return something. It will just take in a quote. You can type anything. Maybe you can say it takes in two, like we always do in programming. And then I will say it will return a widget, which is a text widget. And then this will be a quote. So that is the function we have. That this function, it takes in a quote, and this is a mapping function. So this mapping means that it passes through the list to access all the contents of that list. Then at the end, it returns the text. And then what we are returning is just a text, but we want to convert that text to a list. So we use that function which we call toList. Like, remember those things we used to do in programming where you used to upper, you used to lower, and it turns to lowercase. You used to upper and it turns to uppercase. So even when you want to return the text to a list, you use the function dot then toList. It means that it's going to return the text because this mapping function, what it does, it just passes through the list and then returns what is in the list as a text, because we have said return text, which is the quote. So it returns what is in the list as a text. But for us, we want it to return a list, meaning that we want to convert back whichever we have removed from a list, and we convert it back to a list. So let us try to run this and we see. So here you have to understand what that map function does. It accesses the contents of the list because we have some things in the list. And when it accesses what is in the list, it returns a text. But at the end of it, all we want to return that text back to a list. And now I think you are seeing what is in the list has been displayed on the screen. Are you seeing that?
Yeah.
So whichever has been on that list is displayed on the list. But I told you at first that whenever we have a function and that function only returns one thing, instead of writing these square brackets, it's always better we just use the other arrow notation. That arrow notation, it is common in JavaScript. Do you remember that arrow notation?
I've seen it.
Because it returns just one thing. So instead of writing those brackets, I'm going to cut it from there, and then I just paste it here. Control V, and then we just remove the return function. That arrow means return. So if you write that arrow and then you write return, then it is a repetition. So that is the text. Then I have to remove this. I remove these square brackets now. They are no longer important because these square brackets have been replaced by the arrow function. And you see that we have no errors. So that is the same as writing the other first thing we wrote. So again, if I save, nothing will change. So this one is always easier, especially when you are writing an application with so many lines of codes. So it tries to minimize on the lines of codes you are going to use. And remember, when you're having many lines of codes, it means that your application is going to take a bigger space. And when someone is looking for an application on the Play Store, we always look for those applications which takes less data. So it does something like that. But then there is a scenario that, like, if I have 1,000 quotes, because now we have only 3. What if you have 1,000 quotes and you want to access those quotes? Because you want to include, actually, I want to include the author, because currently I only have the quote, but I don't have the author. So now I want to include the author, such that I have the text, which is the quote, and then I have the author. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come to my project folder, because I'm assuming that I want to enter another quote. Like I want to enter 50 quotes and 50 authors. Then entering them in this same code, it will be a long process and it will be disturbing. So now what we are going to do, we are going to create a different file which can access the text and then the author, or the quote and the author. So I'm going to come to my lib. I think you are seeing that I've pointed on the lib. Then I'm going to right click. When I right click, there is that option for new. And then I'm going to create a new file. Are you seeing this option, that file? At first, I first selected the lib because I want it to be inside the lib. Then when I right click, that option for new is there. Then when I go down, I see that option for that file, meaning that I'm creating a new that file. And then I can give it a name. Maybe I can say quote. I just write quote, then the extension will come automatically and it will be quote.dat. So I want to give it a name which is quote. And now when I check my lib, I think we're now seeing that I have the main and then I have the quote.dat. Are you seeing that?
Yes.
Now inside this file I have created, I'm going to just create a class which is called the quote, because I want to create another class. And inside this class, I'm going to be having a string. Let me declare a string. Maybe I can call it text. And then I want to declare another string, which is the author, because I want to be having a quote and then the author of that quote. Then another thing we are going to do, I think you remember constructors. So those who have not looked at that part of object-oriented programming, especially Java, a constructor is like a function. That function is always having the same name as the class. But what we use that function for is to access. For example, if you want to input a new text, but from the main function, you can only do that when you have that constructor, because that constructor gives access to the main function, to what is in the other file. For example, now I have a string, I have a text which is a string, I have an author which is a string. Meaning that when I'm in my main function, I may want to create a text and the author, but the only way I can access that is using this constructor, because this constructor gives access to the main function. So this constructor, you just write the name of the class, like quote, that is the name of our class. And then inside, because I have a string which is a text. So you just give it those variables you have declared. I have a string text and I have another string which is author. So that constructor always takes in the arguments of the other class. So the other class had a string text and string author. Even in my constructor, I will be having a string text and then a string author. Then I want to give this constructor access to what is in the other class quote. You just use this keyword. I'm going to use this. So I will say this text is equal to text. Also, I have another one which is the author. I just type this keyword, then I type this author is equal to author. In other words, you are trying to mean that you want this constructor to access what is in the other class, meaning that the first text is what is in the other class. Then the next one is what is in this constructor. So we are trying to mean that what is in the other class is the same as what is in the constructor. So that is what our constructor does. Let me see. So if you have a constructor, for example, after that constructor, now I can declare a variable which is a quote. Whenever you have a constructor, now like the same way you always have a variable which is an integer, which is a string. Now you can be having a variable which is having the same name as the constructor. Like if you say int a is equal to this, now meaning that you can have a variable which is declared as a quote, because this quote I have created a constructor which can access what is inside the other one. Maybe I can say quote. Yes. Any question?
No, you can.
Okay. So I can say quote maybe quote A is equal to, so I call my constructor and then I give it arguments. I can just give it arguments. I can say I can get this quote and I write it there. But remember, this constructor is taking in two arguments. The first one is the text and the second one is the author. So I can just give it any author I want. So that is a constructor, then I just terminate. Just like that. Let me see, I'm still having one error here. Has to be initialized. Non-inline, for instance, full author. But it's already initialized. So I can have something like that. So another thing we can do, because when for example, when you are writing a list of text and the authors, I can decide to change the order. For example, if I want to say that I have the author, that this is the author, and then I write the text. Because you may find that in some scenarios, you can't cram the order. So meaning that I have to make sure that my code can be sensitive enough to know that if I write it like this, then it can change the order. So now how can I make this one to work? Because now you are seeing that it is highlighted with red, but I want to make it work. How can I do that? So what we are going to do, we are going to come and change something here because I want this one to be working. So such that I don't have to cram the order. I can do whatever I want and then the thing works. So what you do, you come here inside and you put there these curly brackets. Also closing curly bracket. So when you create these curly brackets, then these curly brackets, for them, they can help you to identify that the order is supposed to be like this, and then the order is supposed to be like this, instead of just cramming the order. So we always use those curly brackets. But when you use those curly brackets, then you have also to change something. Like especially in that constructor, you have to change what is in the constructor. So how do we achieve that? So now what we are going to do, we are going to just remove these ones which are here, because we never use curly brackets. What is inside the constructor, you can actually just write it within that constructor. Instead of writing this dot text, you can just come and write this. You can write it inside that this is this dot text. Also here, you come and write this dot author. So, and after writing it like that, it means now I have to remove what is inside the constructor. So I can remove this bracket for the constructor like this. I just remove it from there, because now I have initialized everything within that constructor, and anything I want is there inside that constructor. Then another thing we can do, because we have a constructor, So I think that is all with the constructor. Then we can just make few editings. So let me see. Can't have a null value, a value of null because of it's set by the APC default value is null. Add the required keyword. No, let me just leave it like that. I don't want to add it there. So now what we are going to do, I'm going to go to my main. So when I go to my main, so I need to do something with the main such that the main can access the other file. How can we achieve that? We just come and import it. After below that, we are going to import. We just write the name of the file. The file is called quote.dat because it is in the same folder with the other one. So I just import quote.dat. We just import it like that. And then after importing it, my list was here. So I'm going to change it. Now I'm going to edit some things in my list. Because now I have a constructor, so it must match with the constructor. So I can type quote. And then I say the author. I can say the author of this one is Uhuru. And then I put there a comma and I write a text. So it has to be in that format whereby I have the author and I have a text, and such that even if you change the order, the constructor does its work and then it works. So I remove that comma, I close the bracket, then I put the comma there. So I'm going to just copy this one and then I paste. I copy, Ctrl+C. I come, I paste it there, and I also paste it there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to change the text. I cut that from there, and I replace it with what is inside. I do the same. I cut this from here. I replace it with what was inside there. And then after doing that, I think you are seeing that we have many errors there. So I think that's okay. Let me change the author. So I've changed the author. But after changing that order, then I have to also change from the return function. Because when you click here, they tell you that the element type quote can't be assigned to this type string. But remember, we had created a list of a string, but now we have changed that. Because we have a constructor, it means that this list is going to change from a string and going to become a quote. Because quote is now what is known, string is not known. We declared strings in the other file, and after declaring it, here we can't be having a string because we have a constructor and that constructor is a quote, so we can access it as a quote. And then after that, what we can do, we go to this children and then we change it. It was returning a text. So also we are going to create a curly bracket there. And we say that whenever we are accessing a variable, in that we use a $sign. So we are going to use that $sign to access the quote. So I want to first print the text before printing the author, meaning that I'm going to be having quote.text. And then I close this. Then I'm going to put a dash there because I want a text, then a dash, then after a text, then a dash, then the author. Meaning that I'm going to access the author. That is quote dot author, like that. And then we have to close the other quotation of the text because we are using a text widget. We opened it from there, and then we have to close it from there. Let me see. We have a quotes. We have dot map. Text in a quote, then it returns a text. And then it converts it to a list. There is a missing bracket there. And then our main function is okay. So what is not okay is this file. So I'm going to delete this file because it is now useless. So let me see. So we have a class, we have a string, we have the author, which is also a string. Then we have a constructor, and this constructor takes in the text. And then it also, why is it showing this? We try to check and see. And then it also takes in the author. I think nothing is missing from there. Let me check for the error and see. A function body must be provided. Use a semicolon instead of a bracket for empty constructor bodies. Okay. Now 2 errors are remaining. Let me try to fix that and see. They were telling me to add that required keyword. So now it's okay. So let's try to run this and we see Control S, we save and see. Let's try to save that and we see what happens. So are you seeing that?
Yeah, we are seeing.
That now we
But,
have. But what?
I'm seeing, but I'm lost from the body.
Okay, we are lost from the body.
Yeah, I'm lost from the body.
Like the changes I've made in the body.
Yeah, children, reports, what?
Okay, so like we say that we use a mapping function. And this mapping function is going to take in a quote, and then it will return the quote as a text. Now what we have done Because remember, at first we had the text, and then inside the text we just had a quote. But when you have two variables, for example, you have the text and then we have the author. That's when we use these curly brackets. Because you said, you remember that we are using a constructor, that when you are using a constructor, we can either access the quote, the text, or we can access the author. But for us, we want to access both of them. So whenever we have that, we use these curly brackets. And this $sign you are seeing is just for accessing the variable. Because I have multiple variables, that's why I always use those curly brackets for multiple variables. That this first, which is the quote.text, is going to print the text. I'm using that $sign because I'm accessing a variable. Then this dash is going to be printed as a dash. Because remember, this all what we are doing are inside these quotes. Let me try to make them double quotes. So all what you are seeing is inside these double quotes. So if I write a dash there, it will be printed as a dash because it is inside that double quotes. Then I want to access another variable, which is the author. Meaning that I'm going to use the quote.author to access the author, because the author is also another variable we have within the other constructor. Are you trying to get that?
Yeah.
Then remember, all that we have been accessing them as a text, but our aim is to print out a list. So at the end of that, we have to convert to a list. That is why we are seeing that to list function there. We are now converting that text to a list. That's why we are having something like this. That we have a text which is a quote, and then we are having an author. Any question?
So from up here.
So from
up, I have a question. From up here, where we're having a list, yeah? There's somewhere you change, yeah?
Yeah, at previous it was a list, and that list was of type
page, main, in the main.
Oh, in the main. Yeah, I'm there in the main.
Are you getting me?
Yes. So this is our main. Remember, at first we had the list and it was of type string. I think you remember that. We had the list and it was of type string. And in that list, we had just a plain text inside that list. But then when we created this class, we created a constructor, which is a quote. Because remember, now our string is declared from here and our author is declared from this from this file. Meaning that it is only this quote which can access the text and the author. The string cannot access the text and the author. So if I want to access what is in this file, because of that constructor, that's why I use the list and then quote. Because now my list is of type quote. It is no longer of type string, because it is this quote which can access the other string. And that's why now you see what is inside. I have a quote, then I type something. Then in the bracket, I have the author and then the text. Because now this constructor can access something like that. The author, even if you change the format, because when you are creating this file, we created it in such a way that even if you change the format, for it, it will know that, for example, let me cut this from here, Control X, and I put it first, Control V. I put a comma there. Now you are seeing that here, I have the text first, and then I have the author last. I seeing that? So this meeting is about to end. Let us connect in the next meeting.